Hi everyone, my name is Sarah
And I'm Lydia.
and we're specialists from the prison service. So we're excited to be here today to share with you a bit more about our program called Looking Forward. So this is the overview of our presentation. I'll take you through the first 2 points and Lydia will take us through the improvements and plans moving forward. So what actually is Looking Forward all about? Let's watch a really short video to find out more.
LF, LF, LF. We have all heard about LF. But what is it really? LF, Looking Forward, is a group-based motivational program that aims to get newly admitted inmates thinking about their reasons for change. LF's function is to ignite the spark for change. But it cannot stop there. You, as captains of lives, play a key role in keeping this flame alive and burning. Every interaction that you have with inmates is a chance for a meaningful conversation to encourage the inmate on his change journey. Let's rewind and start at the beginning. How does LF work? There are 6 LF sessions which last about 1.5 hours. LF sessions comprise a group of 8 to 12 inmates, and 1 or 2 dedicated officers take on the role of a LF facilitator in conducting these sessions. It's definitely not easy for the LF facils, as we all know that operational duties itself can be so taxing. But these LF facilitators make the time, and most of them feel the rewards. LF sparks the change. Now, what can you do to keep that fire burning? In fact, a lot of LF's topics are general life skills. You can use your MAP sessions to ask them about how they can use their strengths, values, and roles to help them set better, good goals. Ignite the spark. You carry a power to influence each inmate on their change journey.
So I hope that video gave you a very quick overview of the Looking Forward program. The video was actually produced to be shown to the other officers in the prison service for them to gain a better awareness of the Looking Forward program. So the Looking Forward program has 4 broad phases. In the first phase, we aim to help inmates gain an awareness of their own motivation level, their own reasons for change. So we start with the topic of motivation, and then we move into the next phase, exploring discrepancies. So this is my favorite phase because you basically try to get inmates to think a bit more about what's important to them in terms of their values and their roles, and how has their life of offending, how has that been congruent or incongruent with what's important to them. So in this phase, we see inmates, having that increased insight in terms of, how their offending behaviors have been taking them away from what is actually important to them. And once we build that discrepancy, we then move on to the next phase where we try to build up their motivation. So here we have a discussion on the strengths and weaknesses that the inmates have. How can they make use of their strengths? How can they overcome their weaknesses? And we also introduce a skill on how to do cost and benefit analysis that can help them with any kind of decisions that they need to make in care or for their future going forward. And in the last phase, we help them to set goals. So we introduce a very simple strategy to set good goals. We also do a visualization exercise to help them envision their future self. So these are the 6 sessions that are covered in Looking Forward. So now let's watch a short video about inmates' experiences of Looking Forward.
How was your experience having officers as your facilitators?
He was okay. He was okay. After knowing that he's actually very funny, then we can open up to him. Yeah. At first when we felt officer, can we?
At first quite uncomfortable because they are authorities or. But eventually after a few lessons, when they start to open up, then I realized they make it very safe for us to talk about our feelings, everything. Then they can relate also. Then we can hear their point of view. So, at first it was uncomfortable. After that, I felt very safe when I can open up with them.
What are some of the changes you notice in you after attending LF?
If you need help, you go to them. So far, I haven't been turned down by them. I get very encouraging words for them. The last interview I have my PS, she mentioned I'm smart and I should go back to my family and not be here. I thought it was a very nice and that brings back the fire back. And every 3 months you review your goal, you see how far you go. Maybe the first 3 to 6 months, the results is a bit, but once the momentum gets going, you see the results very big. For example, when I first came in, I was 89 kilo. I'm 72 now. I used to be able to run only 20 to 30 rounds around the basketball court. Now within 1 hour, I can run 100 rounds. And I did that during the walk for rice. So for every round, someone gets 2 bags of rice, one brown, one white. So that shows that, I mean, you have to gauge yourself, what you want your outcome is different from another person. So your results, you just need to review yourself every once in a while. For my case, it's every 3 months. I will see my letter to my wife, to my son getting sweeter. I'll see my relationship with my mother getting better. I see my weight dropping. I see my relationship with my peers also getting better.
So I hope you enjoyed that video of the inmates' experiences of the Looking Forward program. I will next take you through the evaluation findings of the program. So the evaluation of Looking Forward was guided by the intervention design and evaluation cycle. So this is a model that we use within the prison service to guide our design and evaluation of programs. So for Looking Forward, it was actually implemented in Singapore Prison Service in 2019. And following from that, we decided to do a mix of a process and outcome evaluation to find out a bit more about some of the facilitators that helped with the implementation of LF, as well as some of the barriers that were encountered, in thinking a bit more about how the program can be improved. So the eval method that we actually adopted was a mixed methods analysis. So we undertook a quantitative and qualitative approach. So for the quantitative measures, we looked at things like knowledge retention, treatment readiness as a result of going through a motivational program before attending a psych-based correctional program. We also looked at the quality of relationship that the inmates had with officers. And for the qualitative data, we actually conducted focus group discussions with both the inmates as well as the LF facilitators, who are the correctional officers. So this slide shows you an overview of our evaluation findings. I'll talk a bit more about it in the next slide. How inmates reported having increased treatment readiness. It was also found in our quantitative measures. How does improved relationships, how they actually felt the sessions could be a bit more engaging for a better learning experience for the inmates, as well as the facilitators sharing on how they felt that more support would be helpful for them as in performing their roles as LF facilitators. So going more detail into the evaluation findings, I think what we heard from the inmates is that they found the content to be very useful. They also managed to remember what they learned, and it triggered their thinking about change. And I think what was very significant for us especially was that the inmates felt more comfortable to approach the officers, which was also echoed by the officers, having better understanding of the inmates, which ultimately contributed to their ability to manage the inmates better. At the same time, there were certain challenges that were raised. The officers talked a bit about how they struggled to balance their duties as a ground officer as well as an LF facilitator. They talked a bit about the fatigue, due to the workload. And they highlighted how having more support after attending the LF training could help them perform their role of an LF facilitator better. So I will now hand over my time to Lydia, who will take us through some of the improvements that we made to the Looking Forward program.
I will now share on some of the improvements that were made after our evaluation findings. There were 3 key areas of improvements. Firstly, we redesigned the LF session structure. Secondly, we put in place support platforms for the LF facilitators. And finally, to monitor fidelity, we set up a database as well. This will be elaborated in the next few slides. Let me first share with you about the redesigning of the session structure. Firstly, although now we see that LF has 6 sessions, previously it had 10 sessions. As you saw in the evaluation finding, officers were saying that they experienced fatigue, and that's why we decided to streamline the sessions from 10 sessions to 6. On top of that, we also started using a blended learning approach.
That is, we started using animated psychoeducational videos to introduce the topics and activities to the inmates. These help to ease the officers' burden of delivering the session content, which can be a little bit difficult for them at times. We also added in population-specific reflective questions. These were specifically for inmates serving a longer sentence, and the questions in the manual, the questions in the program were tweaked to make it more relevant to their time in prison. This arose because in our evaluation, inmates and officers gave feedback that for the longer sentence inmates, some of the processing questions were not very easily relatable. Some of these questions that we included were, how would knowing your values or what's important to you help you during your time in prison? Also, how can you use the cost and benefit analysis to help you with important decisions you face in prison? Finally, debrief questions for facilitators were also added in. This was to help facilitators consolidate their reflections on the session and to help them transit from the role of being a facilitator back to being a ground operations officer. Examples of these questions are stated here. For example, what is one thing I like about my role as a facilitator and how can it complement my work in the correctional unit? What is one area I want to work on for the next session? The second improvement pertains to support structures for the LF facilitators. Firstly, peer-led learning circles were instituted so that LF facilitators could support one another, share struggles and challenges, as well as share best practices with one another. An example is seen in the box below. It is a tic-tac-toe box formulated by an LF facilitator. So what happens is, in order to complete the tic-tac-toe box, the inmates would have to answer a question about the topic. Then they could mark their X or their O in the box. Secondly, LF champions were appointed to support the LF facilitators on the ground. LF champions are experienced LF facilitators who can provide the day-to-day support to LF facilitators who may struggle or face challenges in managing their groups. Finally, the last improvement pertains to monitoring fidelity. A quarterly monitoring and tracking database was set up to track changes to LF manpower, to track the coaching of new LF facilitators, as well as the sessions run. This is important to ensure that the LF facilitators on the ground are still being supported even with changes in manpower or with posting cycles that happens from time to time. Now let us take a look at some of the feedback from both inmate and staff on the revamped Looking Forward program, as well as some of the plans moving forward. First, let us look at some feedback from the staff. Officers have shared that there has been increased engagement amongst the inmates with the use of videos and activities. Some activities have been impactful for the inmates, and they have also shared that the videos were easy to follow and they were able to understand the topic contents. Secondly, there were some gender differences in engagement. This was especially pronounced amongst the female inmates, as reducing the number of sessions meant shorter time to build therapeutic relationship. Yet, on the other hand, it frees the officers up for their operational duties. After hearing all of that, what are some of our plans moving forward? We hope to tap on the passionate pool of experienced LF facilitators to train the new up-and-coming LF facilitators. This will help expand our LF training for correctional officers. At the same time, these experienced staff have ground experience and they can share their struggles and challenges and how they overcame them with the new LF facilitators. Next, we are in the midst of planning an LF retreat for all LF facilitators. This LF retreat will help the staff to reflect on their LF roles and upskill themselves. This also serves as an additional touch point for the planning team to get information on the fidelity and ground sentiments. In summary, LF is a unique program where it taps on uniformed officers to be facilitators in the inmate rehabilitation. Tapping on correctional unit officers to run these programs improves relationships and management of inmates, as through going through the sessions together, they find each other more relatable and they find it easier to approach one another for chats. LF is the first touch point in an inmate's rehabilitation journey in the prison institution. Hence, it is important for it to be more engaging since it scaffolds the inmates' expectations of subsequent correctional programs in prison. This helps improve their treatment readiness as well before they go on to other programs. There is a need for consistency and to have a robust support structure to ensure the officer's competency and confidence over time. We have now come to the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for your time.